the big story, obviously up here, and rightfully so, is Caleb Williams, and how is where he's at now? How is his progress being? Is he progressing the right way, and are they using him the right way? From what you've seen, what's your thoughts on Caleb at this point in the game?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and I think that, as you know, that everybody wants to, from one week to the next, wants to be able to say, yeah, there was progress made. No, there's not progress. What are we going to do? And you're just in a fishbowl, and there's opinions each and every week based on whatever happened in the previous game. And I'll tell you, from what I see, I see a really talented quarterback still. I still believe in him. And the fact I'm even saying that sounds crazy, because we're also quick to judge whether these guys are franchise quarterbacks or not. But a lot of the things, we had the Bears going back in the preseason, and I really expected then, I said it during the broadcast, I thought that a lot of things were in place for Caleb Williams to have a great deal of success as a rookie. And there have been more and more rookies have success in this league. We saw it last year, of course, with C.J. Stroud. We've seen it this year with Jaden Daniels and, Bo Nix and some others. But the defense hasn't played, certainly here as of late, hasn't played as well as what I expected them to. I thought they would continue to run the ball better like they did a year ago. That hasn't happened. I see where the offensive line, a lot of questions about them. I think overall, they're not a great offensive line, but I think they're serviceable. And it just has not come together the way that they would like. But I like him. There's some things that he's got to improve upon, which I think he will. But here's what I think. These quarterbacks, whether it's Caleb or anyone else, they come into the league. They've played in these 7-on-7 leagues. They've played in these offenses in college where they're just in shotgun formation, throwing the ball all over the place. And there is more to playing quarterback than just simply being able to throw a football. And a big part of it is knowing game situations. And I think when I watch Caleb, more inclined to take a sack than he is to try to get a ball into a tight window. And I think a lot of that is because quarterbacks ultimately aren't – the statistic of a sack usually falls on the offensive line as opposed to the quarterback rating or some negative statistic that is associated with the quarterback. And there are certain situations in games you just can't simply take sacks, and you have to be aware of what the down and distance is and what's required. How's your defense playing? There's more to quarterback than just simply having physical abilities and being able to throw a ball. And I think all of that is things that he'll continue to improve upon.
Hey, Troy, just let one off of that. I remember one of your attributes. God, I remember sitting up in the press box with Norv, and I was convinced it was going to be a sack. A guy would be bearing down on you, and somehow you make a miraculous throw on the money, and we make a first down or score a touchdown, whatever, and it got hit. And it was hit back in those days. Quarterbacks really got hit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. No kidding.
And nowadays, the way these quarterbacks are protected, do you think there's a little bit of that? Do you think Caleb could help himself by sitting in there longer? Or not?
I think at times I think there's a tendency for a lot of quarterbacks to they don't think so much about just avoiding the sack, avoiding the negative play. I do think that part of it is, and this again is not just Caleb, it's across the league what I see, and it's one of the reasons why last Monday night when I called the Bengals-Cowboys game, Joe Burrow, he may not be the best quarterback in the league, but he's my favorite quarterback in the league, and he throws with anticipation better than anybody in the game. And so these quarterbacks come into the league today, they want to see receivers come out of their breaks. They're a little methodical in the pocket, so everything's kind of slowed down. It puts offensive linemen, which everyone will tell you, it's hard to develop offensive linemen. They're just simply not coming into the NFL. So now you take a position that's not being developed in college, the offensive line, and you put a quarterback behind him who's got this false sense of timing and is hanging on to the football, and they're taking a lot of sacks, which is essentially, killing drives. The drives are over for the most part. When you take one of these sacks, I think the way that you speed a quarterback up, and I say this from experience because, you mentioned Norv Turner, and when he came to Dallas, from day one until the last practice that he coached me 3 years later, every day he said, get out of there, meaning get the ball from the center and drop back as quickly as you can. And we didn't run shotgun. And so I believe when you watch the 49ers or you watch the Green Bay Packers or even the Minnesota Vikings this week, they all come from this Mike Shanahan tree. And with that, there's a lot of under center. And then that tends to speed up the quarterback and it speeds up the timing so the ball's coming out, as opposed to just standing back there in shotgun, because it's hard to develop a timing from the shotgun formation, and quarterbacks are sitting back there just holding on to it as if there's not a pass rush. And I just don't think it's winning football. And that's why I'm really bullish on that offensive system from the Mike Shanahan tree that we see across the league with a number of offenses that are having a great deal of success.
Troy, now that the Bears coaching job is available, do you think it matters if the head coach is offensive or defensive?
Well, I've been called, I will tell you this, I've been called by owners, I've been called by general managers over the years, and I've been asked that very question, because usually I have a few candidates that I like to, if I'm asked about a potential coach or what I think of somebody, and I in a perfect world, I would tell you that I would want an offensive coach as the head coach who also calls plays. And, nothing against, Coach Wannstedt and the defense and all the things that go into that. But I do believe the hardest position on a staff is the offensive coordinator. It's rare when a defense gives up a play. It's rare that the defensive coordinator is under the scrutiny that an offensive coordinator is whenever they don't score down at the goal line or whenever they don't move the football or they don't convert on a third down. I mean, it's just endless. Every armchair quarterback has an opinion on what the offensive coordinator should have done, and it's always after the fact. But it's hard to find those offensive minds. If you're a defensive head coach, and I talked to Bill Belichick about this years ago, and if you have a good coordinator offensively and then he gets a head job, which if he's really good, that's what's going to happen. You've got to have someone else in the pipeline who can step in and really coordinate that offense, and it's not easy to do. So in a perfect world, I'd say yes, I want an offensive guy who also calls the plays, knowing that's not an easy job. But then with the caveat of when it's all said and done, whoever the head coach is, he has to be the head coach. I mean, first and foremost, every team, I don't care who it is, how good of a year they've had, they're going to hit a time in the season to where, you're questioned a little bit and there's a bump in the road and the season can go one way or another. And you need a head coach who can command the room in an environment when players are maybe a little reluctant to listen. And so first and foremost, I want a head coach who can command the room. Secondly, I would prefer that be an offensive guy.
Well, Troy, I can verify what you're saying, and as much as obviously I would, the defensive side. When I was right here at the Bears, I've told the story, and we win, we go to the playoffs, and Ron Turner, Nor's brother, was my coordinator, and he gets the Illinois job, so I end up hiring Matt Cavanaugh at the Dolphins after 2 years. Changeli leaves and goes to college. He was my coordinator. Remember, Norv comes down with me at Miami. Yeah. 2 years, we win 10 games or so, and he gets the Raider job. In 5 years, I was on my third coordinator there. So, I mean,
it's hard.
It is hard.
Hey, Troy, we love hanging out with Dave Wannstedt every week, and one thing that we've learned is that he's fun to work with. And I always think about all these teams that, always wanted Wanney, and him and Jimmy and like all those guys and Butch Davis and Tony Wise and like all the guys who were all together as that culture was being built and happening in Dallas. Was it fun? And did that matter? Because it seems like Dave is a lot of fun and probably was a lot of fun to be on a team with too.
Well, I will tell you this because, Dave's become a real close friend of mine. Jimmy has, Norv. A lot of those guys on that staff, when at the time when they first came in, I was a young rookie and they were trying to build a program.
We were trying not to get fired. Go ahead, Troy. I'm sorry.
That's right. So I think that for us as players, we certainly we didn't see the fun side of it until we started to win. And I think that Jimmy, my guess is Dave would tell you that when they were away from the players, they would find their moments to be able to enjoy themselves, because being around them, that's who they are. But the thing that we had, and I'm sure Dave's talked about it on this show over the years, I just think that what I knew then and what I even know more now is everyone on that staff was loyal to the head coach, Jimmy Johnson, because what happens invariably is you get into your position meetings and players like to bitch. And so they're complaining about this or that. And all of the position coaches that Jimmy brought in with him to Dallas, they were all loyal to Jimmy. So whenever players would complain and say, well, I'm not being used right or this and that, the coaches always backed the staff and what Jimmy was doing or whatever the decisions were made. And that's important, and it's rare, because coaches generally, the position coaches, they want to get along with their players. So when they get off with them, the wide receiver room, the coaches become part of that room with their players and be friends with them. And it just causes some problems. So I think that for us, there just was no chinks in the armor when it came to how we were going to do things, what was expected, what Jimmy demanded. It was from top to bottom, and the message was sent loud and clear.
Yeah, you know what? I got to say this. These guys have all seen the picture on Jimmy's boat. Troy's the only player that really is in with the inner circle. I'm going to say, it was, Jimmy and Norv and myself, Jimmy's guys.
Yeah.
And we would do this stuff. And then, but as far as players, not except Troy.
Yeah.
Well, is that a quarterback's right?
And that,
Troy, is that how that works?
I would say this, that it, Jimmy's last couple years, it started after we won our first Super Bowl in '92. And then that year, Jimmy and I went through some tough times, and we went through periods where we didn't speak, and the thought that we would become as close as we are, and that I would present him in the Hall of Fame. Nobody would have bet on that. But the '93 season, then we continued to win. Everyone's getting along when you're winning. And then when I retired, Jimmy retired about the same time. We both went to work at Fox at the same time, and that's really when Jimmy and I became really, really close. I have tremendous respect for him, and I consider him one of my closest friends. And then I love being around with Dave and Tony Wise and Norv and Butch Davis and all these guys, and just hearing the stories, because they go way back before me. I've known Jimmy since I was, I believe, 14 years old as a sophomore in high school. I went to his football camp at Oklahoma State, and all those guys were there then, at Oklahoma State. But now that I'm older and I'm one of their peers and we're able to just hang out and visit, I love hearing all the stories from behind the scenes, some of which I wasn't even a part of. But to go back to your earlier point, nobody's lacking having any fun when they get together. I'll promise you that.
Hey, Troy. Now I'm gonna bring one thing up. So he said he was at Jimmy's camp, right, when he was 14. I was recruiting a running back out of Bristow, Oklahoma.
That's right.
Charles Crawford. And I was battling Oklahoma to get this kid signed. So I take Tony Wise with me. He never signed anybody, Tony. He was always the guy that was
Wow.
He could always drive, and so they're playing Henrietta High School, where Troy Aikman went to high school. And Tony and I go to the Bristow game, and Tony's got him a big box of popcorn. You guys can, these guys all know Tony. When Tony comes to Chicago, he always comes on the show, so these guys all know him. Tony had him a big box of popcorn, and he's got him a Coke there, and he's digging into it, and he looks, he says, "Wow, look at that big kid on Henrietta's team. Who was that?" And I said, "Are you kidding me? That's Troy Aikman. He's a ninth grader. He had a big handful of popcorn. He says, "Man, look at that big guy out there on Henrietta's team." Oh yeah, true story.
Troy,
Yeah.
all of us that are watching Caleb Williams, and we see him now inside of this losing streak, and even looking at him, like, you feel bad. You went through real tough times at the beginning of this thing in your career. How did you not lose faith?
Well, that's the biggest part of it. I was, man, my rookie year I was 0-11, and there were, the one game we won, I wasn't even the starter, didn't even play in the game. Steve Walsh was the quarterback, and I walked away from a lot of games knowing I didn't play very well, but there were some games I walked away from that rookie season to where I thought I played well enough for us to win, and we were in a position to win, and only to at the end of the game lose. And I just remember walking off the field so many times and going, man, what does it take to win a game in this league? And fortunately for me, we won our very first game of the season my second year, so at least I didn't have to carry that around any longer. But the thing for him is I had Jerry Rome, and he was my quarterback coach, and he just refused to let me lose confidence in myself. He just continually, built me up and made me feel like it wasn't all on my shoulders and that better days were ahead. And so when I'm asked, should a rookie quarterback play right away or should he watch? There's examples of both that have worked. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. But the most important part of it is if a staff feels that the guy is losing his confidence, I think you've got to get him out of there. And we've seen what happened in Carolina with Bryce Young. When he wasn't a rookie. He's not a rookie this year, but when they put him down and then he's come back and he's played better. Sometimes that helps. But the difficult thing in Chicago, I think, is we've seen this before, that we saw with Mitch Trubisky. His coach gets fired after his first year. They bring in a guy who didn't pick Mitch Trubisky. We saw it with Justin Fields, and now we're seeing it with Caleb Williams. And there's just been a tremendous amount of turnover. It's not easy. For those that say, gosh, you just hate to see all this change, I get it. And you do hate to see all that change. But if the change is good and they bring in people who can develop a quarterback and who can coordinate an offense and put him in a position to be successful, like what I had my third year when Norv Turner came in, then the change is good and better days are ahead for him. I just think he's too talented. I still think that team has potential to be a good football team, and we all know. I mean, it sounds cliche, but I do believe that when the Chicago Bears are good, the NFL is a better league. They're just one of those flagship franchises, and I want to see them. I want to see them be good for the fans and for the organization.
Hey, Troy, this has been awesome. We appreciate your time very much. And, we will definitely talk down the road here. But thank you for coming on.
You got it.
We all appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach. Always a pleasure.
All right, buddy.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Troy.